Hey guys, welcome back to the Discipline Life podcast, the place where we talk all about power differential relationships and domestic discipline. I'm Arya, and this is my husband, Coda.
Hello, everyone.
And on today's podcast, we are going to be delving into the topic of abdicating for yourself, especially as a submissive partner.
You guys are allowed to do that? She knows I'm being facetious. Facetious. There we go. That's the word we were searching for. So, abdicating for yourself. This is something that I think might be a hot button for some people. Maybe, maybe not. But this goes back to something that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this could be something that people mistake in a domestic discipline relationship, meaning they think someone is the dictator and someone is the doormat. And advocating for yourself, especially as the submissive partner, I think it's a misnomer that you're allowed to do that. That some people think you don't do that at a domestic
Or that you're not able to abdicate for yourself without asserting the authority within the relationship, without undermining the authority structure. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the case. It's really how you go about abdicating for yourself.
Right. And I think, again, I think that's something that what we're going to talk about in the podcast today, that's what we're going to try to clear up and realize this goes hand in hand with what we've talked about all along about respect. This is a part of a respect thing. It's okay to respect your partner, and your partner, they have consent on these things. It's not an area where the dominant person is luring over that submissive person, and by golly, they better do exactly what you tell them to do, and they better agree to those things and all the things that you come up with, rather than sitting down, agreeing to terms, communicating, and deciding on the things that the dominant partner is going to hold you accountable to.
Because as a submissive partner, you are allowed to have your thoughts, opinions, experiences, your past, your ambitions. You're allowed to have all of those things, and you bring that into your relationship, and a lot of those things help you be an asset to your relationship.
Right.
I think that there's this misunderstanding, or maybe even a whole section of people that have decided that power differential relationships, whether they include domestic discipline or not, are male-centric.
Right.
And that the husband is the one that has the thoughts, the opinions, the ambitions, the drive, the vision, all of the things, and the female partner's only there to serve, submit, obey, and support.
There we go. We got a podcast over. No, I'm just kidding.
And while I will abdicate and I will suggest that you do serve your partner, that you do obey your husband, that you do support your husband, and that you do, what was the other thing that I just said? Honor, respect, all of those things. I forget what I just said when I went through there, but
I was listening, I promise.
While I do think that those are all good things, you do that in a way that is also authentic to who you are, because you're not just a shell of a person without any of your own ideas, without any of your own emotions, without any of your own uniqueness, right?
That you bring to the relationship, right?
And the way you advocate for yourself is that you communicate with your partner, you let your partner get to know you intimately so that they can make better choices for the relationship that reflect not only their vision and their leadership, but also reflect your needs and your desires and your
Wants,
strengths, assets, all of the things that make you uniquely you. Your partner should want to make decisions that create an atmosphere where your uniqueness becomes an asset to the relationship, and you do not have to shed away any bit of personhood that you have in order to be a wife.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to what we've always originally talked about why you and I started in a domestic discipline relationship to begin with. And I think we could briefly touch on that again. And part of that is that our relationship needed some changes in it. But it wasn't like we were, especially me, that I was coming to you going, you know what? You're just out of line, and you need to be put in your place, and you need to, get into this. We need to get into this hierarchy of you're the doormat, I'm the dictator, and it wasn't like that. We, and correct me as I go along here, Aria, but it was more of, I'm trying to sum up what we've said in past podcasts. It was more of, we have something in our relationship that's broken slightly. We need to restructure it to where, yes, I am more of the leader, but that doesn't mean you don't get a say. But I take more of a leadership role in certain areas to take the pressure and the stress off of you. And also there were goals that you were having a hard time achieving that you needed the accountability with me in order to achieve those goals, to better our household and better our relationship. And that was the whole reason we started a domestic discipline relationship. Would all that be accurate, you think?
I would say that's a very good nutshell summary. And if you want to hear more about our story and why we got into domestic discipline and how we got into domestic discipline, that video is the second podcast, or the second video.
Was that the second one we ever did?
It was the second video, the first real podcast. It's the second video right after our introduction.
Yeah. But I felt like it was important to bring that up again, to redefine why it is we got into a relationship. Now, that may not be the same story for everybody, but the point being is that if you're in a domestic discipline relationship right now where you do have a dictator and a doormat relationship, I'm not sure that's healthy.
I mean, everyone gets to decide what they're comfortable with in their own relationships.
Sure.
But definitely, I would say if you are comfortable and even desire being in a position of not having a sense of personhood and a sense of value in your relationship for who you are, not just what you do.
Right.
That's definitely something to look into and just try to figure out where that comes from and if that's healthy.
Right.
And maybe seek some professional opinion on if that is a healthy perspective to have
on that. Yeah. And I think that's what I'm getting at, is that it might work, but I don't know. We're talking about domestic discipline in a way that it doesn't undermine the submissive, and they still feel like they have a voice. They still feel like they have a say within. And again, I always love using this illustration, and I've used it on past podcasts. I'm going to use it again. The fence. There is a fence here, and you can play totally within this fence. And I think there's a lot of room to play. Where you get in trouble is when you decide, I want to play on the other side of the fence.
And some relationships have a balcony. Some relationships have a yard, and some relationships have acreage, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
It just depends on what works for your relationship and what you need as a submissive partner to be successful, and what the dominant partner needs in order to lead successfully.
Yes, but within, as long as you're playing within that fence, whatever it is that you have decided where that fence is going to be, there's nothing wrong. I think there's this misnomer of that just means then, okay, submissive partner, you get to play in here, but now from this point forward, as you're playing in here, you don't ever get to have critiques. You don't ever get to we don't ever have discussions again about whether or not the fence is still in the right place. Maybe we need to bring more of the fence back in. Maybe the boundaries need to shrink or the boundaries need to open up a little bit more. We need to move the fence either out or back in. There's this misnomer of, oh, no, you don't get a say on that. Once the fence is set, it's set. That's the way it's going to be. If you have a problem with that, then you don't ever get to have your voice, and that's not the case.
And I would say that the role of the submissive partner is to never question the dominant partner.
Right. They look at questioning as a bad thing, but that's not the case.
No. Now there's a time and place, right? So,
sure.
If just a scenario that would probably never happen, but
I don't know where she's going with this.
Well, no, if Coda were to wake up suddenly in the middle of the night and it woke me up.
Yeah.
And he told me, you need to get down, or maybe he heard something I didn't hear. I'm not supposed to just be like, what's going on? What did you hear? Because those are moments where those seconds count a lot.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, we live in an area that has never been an
Knock
issue. But there's times where he needs just my blind obedience in the moment, and then we can
sort that out afterwards.
Right.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the time, it's acceptable for me to ask why or what's going on.
What's going on, right. Excuse me.
And that doesn't make me less submissive. That doesn't make me less traditional or, whatever you want to say. It just makes me human.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I don't think that Coda would just want someone who never questioned, that only ever did exactly what he said.
Right.
Now, again, your mileage may vary. You may want to structure your relationship where the wife is in more of a role of servitude, and that works for some relationships. It really, really does. And not to say that my submission lacks a sense of service. I definitely serve Coda in so many ways, but I also make a lot of daily decisions because he doesn't have the time
or the energy
to do a lot of those things because he works a full-time job. It's not a typical office setting, so his work hours vary. And then he goes to school full-time. Yep. And so he's out of the house between 60 to 80, sometimes 90 hours a week.
Man, is that a lot? Holy cow.
Kind of depending on what he's doing and what's going on at the time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that he counts on me to be a representation of his vision. So he's given me the vision. He's given me his goals, his preferences, his leadership on. We've been married long enough that I know, like, for instance, there have been times where on my Instagram account, I'll do a Q&A and I'll include questions to him, and he'll be able to answer those questions for like the first day. But if it bleeds into the next day and he's at work, I can answer on his behalf in his tone because I know him that well.
And I won't get upset for the fact that you answered for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Because so that's one scenario, but you count on me to be able to do that in almost every aspect.
Yeah.
Where, we've mentioned on the podcast before that I am not allowed to answer the door when you're not home.
Right. And that's because it's a safety thing.
And because, a few months ago, before we had established that as a rule, I did answer the door, and it was a salesperson wanting to put internet into our house or something.
Oh, I forgot about this.
And I made it very clear that I need to ask my husband, like he makes the decisions on all of these things. And they went ahead and set up the appointment, and
He was
they were
very pushy.
They were
Yeah.
very pushy.
Very pushy.
But I answered them in a way that was representative of Coda's leadership in our home, even though they didn't accept that.
No.
But because I'm able to, and you count on me to do that. And so,
Right.
you know, I would say the role of the submissive partner is more of a role of supporting the vision of the dominant partner,
Right.
obeying the rules that are set, but also it's a role that is advisory. Like, I advise you on decisions with my unique perspective. And then you take my advice
Yep.
and my perspective and the information that I've given you, and then you make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I don't agree with that decision, I accept it and I support it, and I do any action steps I need to do to help you actualize that decision.
Now, also to bring this up, it doesn't mean, though, that before I make that decision that you don't get input.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like
Right.
during that advisory time where I'm like, okay,
Right.
here's the information I gathered, or here's my thoughts and opinions
Right.
on the matter, or if I were making the decision, this is what I would do.
Right. Right.
That's all the conversation that we have when I'm giving my perspective
Right.
and giving that advice, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can choose to ignore all of that. Now, you're pretty good because most of the time you really take that into strong consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And we come to
I try to.
and we come to a decision that really works for both of us most of the time.
Yeah.
However, there have been times where you're just like, I hear you, but that's not what I want to do.
Right.
And that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do not ever give you advice in a way that would, where I'm trying to manipulate your decision.
Right.
I am literally just trying to make sure that you have all the information that you need to make the best decision for our family.
Right. Right. Yes. And so to kind of piggyback on that, one of the things I was thinking about is I used to work for Apple. Many of you are big fans of Apple. I still am as well. But one of the things that they do, which I think is really great, is they're this company where there's this open dialogue. You have a hierarchy. You have the district manager of retail, and you have managers of retail stores, and you have assistant managers under them, and then you have what they called your leads, right? But one of the things that I really liked about what they did, which is why they've been such a great company to work for, is they practice this thing called fearless feedback. And what it is that you could say anything that you want to any of your bosses as long as you did it respectfully and you didn't lose your cool. So in other words, there was a time where we were having a really, really busy day. It was kind of a little bit of a stressful day. And I felt like one of my managers was a little short with me. I was actually able to go to him, pull him aside, and without consequence, by the way, they didn't believe in this, oh, you pulled your manager aside and talked to him about how they were mean to you, you should get canned because a regular salesperson should not do that. No, you were allowed to pull that person aside, and again, as long as you talk to them respectfully, in a respectful tone, and use respectful language, you could say, hey, I know it was maybe in the heat of the moment, but this scenario over here, I felt like you were really short with me, and it actually really hurt my feelings, and I just didn't feel good, and now I feel like there's a wedge between us, and I want to get that fixed. And you know what? That was awesome, because in that situation with my manager, I was able to pull him aside, let him know, and you know what? He didn't even realize he did that, but he went, you know what? I'm really, really sorry. And we were able to, he apologized. We were able to work through that scenario and continue working. And the reason I bring that up is that is such a great example, I think, of how a domestic discipline relationship works, because I was I was under the leadership and the authority of my manager. He had the the authority and the maybe I'm just looking for the word authority, but he had the ability, that's what I'm looking, the authority and the ability to really tell me anything I needed to do. Nathan, you need to go over here and sell an iPad. You need to go over here and help set up a computer or whatever. You needed to help take this person and get them checked into the Genius Bar, whatever it was. And I submitted to that authority, obviously, because I had a job and I wanted Apple to succeed as a company and I liked working. But at the end of the day, if I felt mistreated, if I felt like there was something that was going on, I had the right to be able to pull him aside and respectfully talk to him and try to work things out for the benefit of the company.
And you would always obey those orders when you were told you need to go over here and sell this person a product, or you would obey those without question because they made sense to your job, right?
That's exactly right.
But if your manager came up to you and said, "Hey Nathan, I need you to go clean the bathroom," you would probably be like, "Why?" Because that doesn't necessarily make sense to the position that you held.
Even though we were assigned to that, but yeah.
but they wouldn't get upset with you for just asking, hey, why are you sending me back there to do that?
Yeah, right. Especially if there was a time I wasn't, because we were always assigned to do that. So if it was a time that I wasn't assigned, I'd just say, "Oh, that's fine, but why?" "Oh, well, so and so is supposed to do it. They're
busy
out, or they're sick or whatever." Oh, okay, no problem. And I didn't get in trouble just for asking why.
So now that we kind of established the role of submission and what our view of submission includes and what our view of submission excludes, let's get into more of how does a submissive partner advocate for their needs in a way that does not undermine the authority of their dominant partner.
I'm glad I led with that story of being at Apple, because I think that's a perfect way to segue into that.
Because I would say that we talk a lot about communication on this podcast, and we talk a lot about communicating with your partner, not only, and that includes your needs.
Yeah.
It also includes so many other things. But really, that's the heart of advocating for yourself, is honest communication. And the way you do that without undermining the authority of your husband is to do that with respect.
Right.
And so you need to be able to come to your partner and you need to be able to say, we are for instance, Coda and I had a discussion. Last week,
Probably.
where I had earned a punishment, and because of some things that had happened, I came to him and I was like, "Look, I know that this is the way punishment is structured, where we have corner time before," but I told him, I was just like, that's not really productive for me.
Right.
It works for so many people, which is why we structured it that way. Mm-hmm. But I was able to come to him and just be like, here is what I see as the issue with that. And here is what it's supposed to do, but here's what it's actually doing. And it's not productive to the overall process of correction.
Right.
And he knows that I am not trying to get out of something just because it's uncomfortable.
No, in fact, we did the punishment. We just restructured how the punishment was going to go.
Right. But it's not that I was saying, oh, I don't want corner time because it's really uncomfortable and I don't like it.
Right.
I share the goal with Coda that punishments will create a motivation towards positive behavior as well as reconcile misbehavior.
Yeah.
And so he knows that when I ask for something to change, it's not because I'm trying to make punishment easier.
Right.
It's because I'm saying there is an issue here that is making it to where the goal of punishment is being harder to achieve.
Right.
And so I came to him and I was like, okay, if you still want to structure the punishment to have the corner time beforehand, I will submit to that. But here is why I don't think that that's working for me.
For you, right.
And I want to communicate my thoughts and feelings on the subject. I want to give you all the information so that you can make an informed decision that supports our goals to the best of the ability to do so. And he did. He made a change. We structured it differently. It ended up being more successful for us.
It sure did.
In fact, we're going to do a Patreon exclusive podcast in the near future, talking about how we've changed our punishment system.
Yep.
But all of that to say, I was able to advocate for my needs in a productive way because I was respectful, I was calm, and I came at it from the standpoint of, you still get to make this decision. I am just giving you information based on where I am at emotionally and where I'm at in what I need from this relationship.
Right.
Because as submissive partners, we are allowed to advocate for our needs. We are allowed to advocate for the relationship that we want.
Yes, absolutely.
We started domestic discipline because I advocated for what I needed from Coda's leadership. And I was able to advocate for the relationship style that I wanted. However, the flip side of that is we also have to realize that dominant partners get to have their thoughts, opinions, unique perspectives, emotions, and they get to advocate for their needs and what they are willing to do and not to do. So if I would have come to Coda and said, this is the relationship structure that I want and this is what I need from it, he could have said, I am just not willing to do that. I can't. I would have had to submit to that because we were married. And this is not an issue that I personally felt like if we couldn't have domestic discipline, it's not something that I would have ended our marriage over.
Right. Exactly.
However, if we were unmarried and we were in that dating, get to know each other phase, and I knew that I needed domestic discipline and I came to him and he was unwilling to do it, it may have been something I'd be willing to cut off a dating relationship for in order to find what I needed.
To find what you needed. Exactly.
But since we were already married, if he would have said no, then I would have said, okay, I respect that. I still need your leadership and I still need accountability. How can we do that without discipline?
Right.
And that's where the conversation would have gone.
Yeah.
Because I still needed to advocate for the relationship that I needed and wanted. But I still have to respect what the other person is willing
Needs
to do.
and wants.
Because I am not a doormat, I am not a shell of a person that is only here to serve and obey and do exactly what I'm told.
What?
Coda, the dominant partner, is not here to bark out orders and be stoic and, administer discipline and
tell you how to think. Literally have to tell you every single little thing. Like, I don't want to be a micromanager. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not there to be a micromanager.
Relationships are collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Where both people get to bring in their wants and needs, and then they work together towards their goals. Usually, I would say that the best case scenario is that you have mutual goals, but usually those goals are driven by the dominant partner's decisions, right?
Yeah, sorry, you can finish what you're saying. I just thought of another analogy for the guys out there.
Mr. Loves an analogy.
Yeah,
another one.
That's me. But I think this will really work for the guys too. Not that they've already had trouble getting it in the podcast, but here's another perfect example. When you talked about coming together and abdicating, what happens on a professional sports team with assistant coaches and coaches? Does the head coach always come in and go, I don't want to hear from the assistant coaches at all? No, of course not. Ultimately, he's going to make the decision on what play is called and what plays get put in for that game day, but he listens to his assistant coaches too. They have a voice. They tell him who's doing well, who's not, who's injured, who's not, who we need to think about cutting, or who they need to think about bringing up from the practice squad, or whoever. He listens to all that information, and then, at the end of the day, he does make a decision, and maybe he does make a decision based on, in other words, he makes a decision that was the recommendation of an assistant coach. Does that make the assistant coaches any less than him? No. Does it make them any more than him? No. But at the end of the day, he's the guy that makes the decisions. He's the guy that if the team loses or wins, his name gets printed in the newspaper, especially if they lose. But that doesn't mean the assistant coaches are somehow less than him, but because he's going to listen to them, but he still makes the decisions at the end of the day.
And just to point out, in your analogy, the husband is the head coach, the wife is the assistant coaches.
That's right.
The wife is not the players.
No, she is not the player. She's the assistant coach. That's exactly right.
The players are the daily decisions that are made in the relationship.
Yep.
You could say, well, the children are the players. Not all couples have children.
That's right.
And eventually your children leave, and you still have
this relationship
dynamic. And so you really have to look at it as like head coach is the husband, assistant coach is the wife, and then the players are the activities and decisions
and
of
goals.
goals of daily life, where the assistant coach might say, hey, head coach, I don't know if you saw this over here, but this play has the potential to
have them score,
or the potential to really mess up
our goal of what we're trying to do. Yep.
And then the head coach, the husband, takes that information and makes a decision. And he might say, no, it's fine. Leave it alone. And then it's his responsibility.
Yep.
Ultimately.
Just like at the end of the day, if the defensive coordinator says, hey, I really think we need to shore up the right side because I think they could score on the next play. I'd really like to switch these players around. And if the head coach says no, and they score a touchdown, guess who that's on? That's on the head coach, not the assistant coach. Or he makes the decision and says, you know what, I like that idea. We're going to do that. And at the end of the day, good head coaches will still go, hey, I really appreciate that you pointed that out to me. But he still gets credit for the touchdown or the interception or whatever happens on that play. But you're absolutely right. That was very good to clarify. The submissive partner is the assistant coach, not the players. The assistant coach is that submissive partner, and the head coach is the husband. Everything, and that's how that relationship works, and that's a good relationship. It doesn't mean they don't have authority. It doesn't mean they don't have a say. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that there is a little bit of a hierarchy, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is a little bit of a hierarchy, and at the end of the day, the head coach still makes the decision, but there are voices that are heard. They're still able to say what they need to say in a given moment to reach the goals. Absolutely. Hey, I think that was a pretty good way to sum that up. What do you think?
I think so. I was going to say, do you have any other thoughts? Or
No, I'm done with the analogies, I think, for this podcast.
I was about to say, give it a few minutes, right? But
Ouch.
no, I think that was a perfect way to sum it up. I mean, I get that people want to live in this fantasy world where, women exist only to serve men, and that they do not have any thoughts and opinions of their own, and that they function as things and not people.
Right.
But that's not life. No. And that's definitely not life in the West where we live. We live in the United States.
We have freedom.
And I'm not going to speak to other cultures, but it would surprise me if that is a functional way to run a household anywhere, where you do not treat people like people, you treat them like property.
And at the same time, I want to point out too, the opposite is also bad too, where where women think they need to put men down because they don't like that there is a hierarchy and that things work best when a hierarchy is a certain way. That's not good either.
No, I mean, and that's the plight of our society, right? Is that,
I mean, we have extremes.
we have extremes, and we see the extremes on both ends, but we really do need to strive to create cultures within our homes.
Yes.
Where we have authority and we have submission, but that comes together in a way that honors both people and honors the needs and the wants and the goals of both people.
Yes.
And choose a partner that you can really come together with and share those goals so that it doesn't feel taxing to serve them. It doesn't feel like, difficult to work with them towards a goal. Try to make
it doesn't feel hard to submit.
Right.
Yeah.
But even if it does at times, understanding that authority, even when it's difficult to submit to you, because there have been times, I understand that you respect me as a person, you honor my needs, and that you have vision for our family, and that still allows me to submit to you even when I disagree with you.
That's good. That's good to point out. It's very good.
And so all that to say, advocate for yourself, find your voice, and communicate respectfully. And dominant partners understand that your submissive partner is a fully functioning human with wants, desires, needs.
Part of the team.
And honor her personhood in a way that makes sense for your family and that allows her to truly be an asset.
Yes.
Not just a object of submission. So.
Let her be that true assistant coach, because the head coaches need those assistant coaches. Absolutely. So, hey, we made it.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. And if you want to get connected to us, we have our email down below. You're welcome to email us anytime. We also have a link to our Patreon where you can find bonus content. And in fact, I think we're going to have like a little post show of this podcast up on Patreon. Coda's looking at me because he's like, what? We didn't talk about this.
Nope. I'm like, what are you talking about?
I think it'd be great to just do a little 15-minute post show.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I just took me by surprise. Now I'm going to like clam up all of a sudden. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also to, what do they say? Smash that alert button or bell or whatever it is. Smash the bell. Or is it supposed to smash the subscribe button? I don't know.
Oh, honey.
I know.
Smash the like button. Hit
like
the bell.
button. Okay, hit the bell. See, I messed it all up already. Look, I'm just not used to that. And yeah, don't forget to support us on Patreon. There's a lot of new good stuff coming, so we appreciate you tuning in.